Hey guys, so I finally got all the books done, so I wanted to give you an update video on what I got out of this, how many books it was, how much profit I'm looking to make, how long it took me, an hourly rate. I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to share all the stats that I kept on this. It was quite a grind, as you can see, but if you remember from the previous videos, all the books went from here to here. So that was kind of how I kept track of them, and definitely quite a bit more books than I thought it was going to be, which was a good problem to have. But at the same time, that led to a little bit longer processing time. Also, of course, more profits. And so I want to share with you what I found and also my plan for getting rid of the rest of these. So let's take a look at the numbers. Alright guys, so here is the update on how the books finally turned out. I'm going to go through all the numbers and explain each one of them and what they meant. And this is exactly what I had on my spreadsheet. I took it directly from there. I kept track each day of how many books I processed, how many were good, how many were not so good, and how long it took me, as well as the amount of profit that I was looking to make. So first off, the total number of books was 3,400. This is about 1,400 more books than I thought. Actually, when I looked at these books originally, I thought there was definitely more than 2,000. So I knew I was getting a pretty good deal for $380. That was my buy cost. But I didn't know it would be quite 3,400. It was interesting. It came in right at that. Now, there were some DVDs, some VHS movies, and so on that were included in that. But overall, it was 3,400 items that all had saleable potential. So I included them all in the total, and there weren't that many DVDs and VHS and so on, maybe 15, 20. Of those 3,400, 260 of them were saleable. So that works out to 8%, as you can see. My criteria for whether it was saleable or not kind of evolved over the time I was doing all this. I didn't want to sell anything that made less than $1 profit. That was like an absolute floor for me. But there were probably a few things that were in that $1 to $2 range that I did not list for various reasons, mainly usually because maybe the condition was questionable. I was trying to avoid any returns with any of these items too, so even if I had good profit but the condition was just not that great, I didn't send it in. You know, I'm still a fairly new seller on Amazon. I don't want to screw up my rating. So, you know, 8%, is that a good number? I don't know. Somebody in one of my groups mentioned that if I got 5% of the books out of it as saleable, I'd be doing well. So I feel like 8 is pretty good if that's the case. But you could probably argue I could probably push up to 1 in 10 if I maybe got a little less stringent on my condition and rank criteria and profit margin. There were a lot of profitable books, don't get me wrong. I mean, there was probably another 100 to 150 books, maybe more, that were profitable, but they just weren't very profitable. So I didn't want books to sit around and incur storage fees. You know, so if you got a book that's like a 1.8 million rank and it's selling 1 copy a month and there's 30 offers, you know, 12 are going to sell in a year. Will it be one of yours? Maybe, but if not, you're going to incur long-term storage fees as well as the monthly fees as you go. So I tried to be on the conservative side with what I sent in. Expected sales. The expected sales were $1,280. Now, what that represents is my net sales after Amazon's fees come out. How do I know this? Because all these orders were created in Inventory Labs. I actually created a specific supplier for this particular experiment, so I will know exactly how I'm doing on all these items as I go over the next, 3 months, 6 months, a year, what have you. And that worked out to a net of $4 and I believe that's 92 cents per book. So almost $5 a book. Again, is that a good number? I don't know. I mean, I had to put back, 92% of the books that I looked at, I didn't get to send in. So, making $5 a book, you can process a book pretty quickly, but, you got to go through some other books that are not going to be worth selling to get to the one that is. So I don't know if $5 per book is worth it or not, net profit after everything. You can decide. The big thing was, how much time was it going to take me? The total time, and I kept track of this as I went, and I think this is a pretty good estimate, 39.15 hours. So that included about 10 hours of pickup and 29 hours to process. The 10 hours to pickup was really high because it was me and two other people, and I had to drive an hour away twice to get that done. So that was 4 hours of driving right there. That's probably high. You probably could get by with a lot less than that on most pickups. That was probably an unusual pickup even for a 3,500 book order like this. So keep that in mind. The 29 hours to process, that's over 100 books an hour I was processing. That's probably about right. It might be a little fast. I mean, some of these some books I didn't, spend a lot of time on because either they didn't have barcodes, they were in poor condition, they were kids' scholastic books that I'd already processed maybe one of the same series, and it was just, not worth it at all, so I didn't go through the other 2 or 3. So I was processing over 100 books an hour, which I think is probably pretty good. So 39 hours to do all this. Think of it this way. That's basically a work week at a normal 8 to 5 job. I basically spent the equivalent of an entire work week processing these books and sending these books in. Probably throw in there another hour of time to get these books in boxes and send them out. I think I only sent 8 shipments, maybe. It got broken up into the way it broke up, which doesn't take long when you have inventory labs. I mean, you just batch, create that shipment, go into your Amazon, put in the stats, print the label, and you're done. Really quick. So to do 8 shipment boxes, 8 different shipments in an hour, sure, easy. So maybe add another hour. So right around 40 hours was what it took me to do this from start to finish. From the time I went to go get the books, to loading, to driving back, to unloading them, to going through all the ones that weren't sellable, to pulling out the ones that were sellable, and putting them in boxes and getting them sent to Amazon. So about 40 hours. Okay, so next up is my expectation for reflipping these books. I've actually already relisted these books. I hope to sell them off in bulk, just like I bought them. I think I made a really good ad, took some nice pictures, a great description. I hope to get, I've actually listed them higher than this, but if I could get 25 cents a book, that would be a $7.50 gross on all these books roughly. I would be really happy with that. That would be almost twice what I paid for them. So I would be in the money right there, plus all the profit I get from Amazon. I don't know if that's doable or not. I feel like $0.25 per book is reasonable. I think it's understandable. People will hopefully think that that's a decent price to pay. And I actually think it is a decent price to pay because whoever buys these is probably going to put these in a bookstore or maybe at their flea market booth. So paying 25 cents a book when they're probably going to sell them for $1 or even $2 or $3 in a lot of cases is a pretty good deal for them too. That's a nice cost of goods sold. They're getting a 4x if they're selling for $1 or 8x if they're selling for $2. So we'll see how that goes. But included in that, if that happens, if I make $7.50 off of the reflip of these, that will give me a net profit of $16.50, which as you can see is an hourly rate of $42.16. This is the part of the video where you have to decide if it's worth it or not. I have been thinking about this entire process, and obviously I'm thankful for what I learned. I am glad that I did it. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of grunt work. It was a lot of just scan. Oh, there's a good one. Scan. Oh, there's a good one. It was a lot of that. It was dirty. There were bugs. There was boxes falling apart, stacking and restacking, trying to watch my back and not kill myself. There's all these things that I had to navigate during this process, as well as the storage and packing and shipping and so on that go along with a normal, a normal sourcing run like this. I think the hourly rate's pretty good. I don't know that it's a great rate for a reseller, because when you think about your hourly rate, you still got to pull taxes out of that. You still got to pull insurance. You still got all these other expenses and so on, your overhead. So I don't know that big, large book lots are going to be in my future anytime soon without maybe knowing exactly what I'm getting beforehand. Now that's tricky because you're not going to go pick up 3,000 books from somebody and they're going to have a organized list by ISBN. It's just not going to happen. So you run into this dilemma of, well, do I spend the time to take the chance and the risk to go through it all, which I did, and it's going to pay off. There's no way I lose in this deal. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you have to ask yourself, if I had, a bowl that had 40 hours of my time in it, where would it make the most sense to pour out that time? Would it make the most sense to pour 5 hours here in this part of my business, or 10 hours here, or 2 hours there? And it's not only just making sense in terms of just pure profit, also in terms of what's going to sustain your business going forward. The cool thing about these books is, the 260 that I've sent in, is that they're going to sell going forward. They're going to give me income and, bits and pieces for probably a year before I maybe, I might have Amazon ship back the rest, or maybe I'll have them destroyed. It just kind of depends on where I'm at a year from now. But I think to myself, could I have made more if I'd have spent that time in other categories and other pursuits? 40 hours, you have to remember, this happened over roughly 19 days, so almost 3 weeks. It was split up over. So about 13 hours a week is what I spent on the books when you count up everything. And a big chunk of that, 10 hours, was right at the beginning. So it wasn't like I was having to, just go at this tooth and nail for days on end to get it done by a certain deadline. I was able to sort of space it out, which I think was good because it helped me keep my sanity. I got to tell you, if you had to just sit there and scan books all day, it's a grind. And I don't know that, not only do I think it wouldn't necessarily be the most cost-effective use of your time, I just think mentally it would wear on you. I think you would make mistakes. Anything that you do repetitively like that over and over and over, you always fight against getting lackadaisical, and you start missing details and minutia slips by you, and all of a sudden you're making mistakes. Mistakes which will cost you money, feedback, what have you. So I don't know that doing this long term would make a whole lot of sense. Now, if you had an employee or two who you could break this up into chunks, one person is doing the initial check-in, someone else is doing scanning for rank maybe, and then someone else is doing the actual listing, that would be a much different proposition. And I think, if you were doing volume as some of the really big booksellers do on Amazon, I think that would make sense, and you could pull a nice business, a nice part of your business out of that. But to do it by yourself and to do, imagine if I had 3,000 books every week. I had a supply of 3,000 books I could get every week. I could spend my entire week, a 40-hour work week roughly, doing just that. But I don't know that I'd pull enough money out of it to really, make myself feel like I was doing what I should. It's a great net profit for a week. If you could pull $1,650 a week as a reseller, that's a great salary. That's about $80,000 a year. But you definitely can do it different ways and build your business with other methods that will be quicker and easier and not so monotonous. So I guess it really just depends on what you like, what your business model is, and what your goals are for, how you're going to build your business in general. that all being said, I'm really glad I did this. I'm glad I documented the journey so you guys could kind of follow me along. I'll give you an update when I get rid of the rest of the non-saleable books and what that looked like. And just, I'm glad that I'm glad that I was able to have this learning experience. I took a risk. It definitely is paying off. It's going to pay off, continue paying off. So I'm happy about that. And I learned a lot about myself, my business, selling books on Amazon, scanning, the listing process, cleaning, prep, all that. So now I'm a better reseller as well as making a profit on this, and as well as learning all these great things. So I hope that the journey was good for you too. I hope that you were able to glean some information from it. You were able to, maybe use some of the ideas we talked about and the processes to help you in your business, no matter whether it's books or electronics or clothing or whatever it is you're doing. And, because that's why I'm here. So, that being said, I really appreciate you guys watching and giving me comments and constructive feedback along the way as well. So if you like this video, please consider hitting the like button down below. I would really appreciate it. Also, leave me a comment. I like to hear from you guys, try to answer all of them. And as always, this is Prof Sales saying good sales to you.